or complex.
So I'm going to go ahead. We'll go ahead and start this. My name is James Gerke. I'd like to say that I'm the new trustee of Camino for Good. Angela, my wife, and I are taking over this responsibility as of last year. We've had some false starts and stops along the line, but I think we're off to a good start this year, where we're going to hopefully our goal would be to have a monthly topic that we could do along with those who are joining us on the app and using Camino for Good to do the virtual pilgrimage. This month, our topic will be on focus or on goal setting. We thought this was an appropriate thing since the beginning of the year. Let me tell you a little bit about myself, just as background. I've spent my career in leadership development. So I do workshops for companies having to deal with communication skills, selling skills, conflict management, personality styles. And I've been doing that for well over 30 years now. 30 years of career, about 20 years in leadership and development. I consider myself a pilgrim. I first went on the Camino de Santiago in 2009, and like many of you who have experienced the Camino, it changed my life. I was going through a very difficult time in my life at the time, and I think that time of reflection, the time with nature, the time of stretching myself physically, changed my life. I must admit, I cheated. For some of you may consider this cheating. This is a picture of me. I did it on a bike. It was a mountain bike, and I did the Camino del Norte. Since then, my wife and I have done this 5 times, either on bike or walking. We've also ventured outside of Spain and did the Via Francigena in Italy in August, or excuse me, in October of this year. So my hope in doing this and working with this project this month is to consider that, I'm going to stop sharing here for a second, and if I can see, if you can see this, I have this favorite thing of mine. It's hard to see with the virtual background. It's a Far Side calendar. So every morning I sit down at my desk and I get a little chuckle as I turn that page, right? I rip that page off. It's a new day. I rip it off. I get a chuckle and I start my new day. I'd like to consider what we're doing at the beginning of the year, not just a page turn, but that we stand at a threshold of the new year. And I use this threshold. I mentioned there, I had it on the slide, I'm a doctoral student. I'm studying, of all things, pilgrimage spirituality, and I'm writing my thesis right now. One of the things I like from the idea of spirituality in a pilgrimage setting is this idea of a hero journey, right? That every hero opens the door, they stand at the threshold, and it's that first step out into the unknown. That step into discovery and self-discovery. So I think we have that opportunity at the beginning of every year to start our own little hero's journey, our own little year pilgrimage into the unknown and into a start of a new life, in a sense. I'm going to skip through that. This is a favorite quote I have. It's from Seneca. He said, "A man should never wander around aimlessly, but steer his ship on a definite course, not where the wind blows, but to a port of his choosing." I think that's so important as we're talking about this new year and starting a new journey. It's unlike another quote I like from Alice in Wonderland, and this is when she meets the Cheshire cat. She asked the cat, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" And the cat says, "That depends a great deal on where you want to get to." "Well, I don't care. I don't much care where," said Alice. "Well, then it doesn't matter which way you go," said the cat. Well, she said, "So long as I get somewhere." "Oh, well, you're sure to do that," said the cat, "if you only walk long enough." One of the things I think is beautiful about pilgrimage is that we walk with focus, we walk with purpose. Um, I'd like to say that we work like the scripture says. I think when Christ called his apostles to go out and preach the gospel, he said, "Do it with all your heart, might, mind, and strength." And I think that sums up to me what the insights from pilgrimage is, that we do it with all our heart. We're we do it with all our might. We're putting everything into it, into our heart, into our mind, and we stretch ourselves physically. And I think that's, in my mind, is where enlightenment comes. That's where we have this aha moments as we're walking, as we're on pilgrimage. So that I wanted to lay that out. I would ask each of you, we don't have, I don't think I have time to go through everyone, and I'd love to hear more of you, but why don't you put in the chat, if you would, where you're calling from. I'd love to hear from some of you. And also a little bit about your pilgrimage experience. If you've done pilgrimage on the Camino for Good app, if you're new to the app, if you've done it in real journeys, I would love to hear from some of you. Either, so thank you, Elaine from Calgary. Good. And anyone else who'd like to, thank you. Vancouver, thank you. Toronto, excellent. You do the Camino Francés, Steve, in September, October, excellent. Deb from Dallas, we got, it's going fast now. Pennsylvania, Ottawa, Canada. Good, excellent. Angelique from the Camino Francés in November, fantastic. So my goal today would be to introduce you to our program, that what we're hoping to accomplish in January. And as a reminder, I'm going to put this up here on the chat. So the workbook on this, if you haven't downloaded it, it is for purchase. We try to keep it minimal. It's $4.95, I think, is what we posted. So I put that up on the chat. If you haven't downloaded it, all the materials I'm going to go through today are on that. If you don't download it, I think you could probably get the gist of everything we're doing from the call, though, today. I'm just reading through some of these as well. So I'd love to see the people who've worked on the app. That's fantastic. And keep your goal for doing it in real life sometime. That'll be fabulous. Mark, you've done many routes, taken groups. I think that's fantastic. That's something I'd love to do sometime as well. Sarah just finished the Francés and 5 trips. Excellent. Excellent. I did the same thing for a while. I walked segments when I couldn't get a month to walk. So I walked segments of a week at a time. That's a good way of doing it if you can get back there. So I'm going to open up this tool. Hold on just one moment. Technology is great as long as I do it right. That's not what I wanted. Sorry. I'll try that again. Anyone have any questions or comments while I'm searching for this? By all means, chime in. Sorry. Here it is.
Hi, James.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. James, I have a quick question. What do you mean by pilgrimage exactly? I'm new to this. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I think most people here on the line have done a pilgrimage or have walked the Camino de Santiago or are familiar with it. I think that's probably most of our reference points, if I'm not mistaken, for most everybody. So how do you define pilgrimage? I think I said it in my introduction. I think it's a journey of heart, mind, heart, might, mind, and strength. And what I mean by that, it's generally, I think it requires a stretch physically, a focus in our minds, an openness of our hearts to learn. And the the Camino de Santiago is a great example of that because it forces us, right? We walk some 600 kilometers, 500 kilometers across northern Spain. We just did the Via Francigena and from the Swiss border down to Rome. It's the same thing, same experience. A long time walking, a lot of time with your heart, a lot of time with your mind. And I think it's a journey as we've tried to say here, it's an enlightened journey. It's a journey where we find answers to questions, we learn more about ourselves, and as we stretch and struggle along the line. Um, I personally think there's a religious or a spiritual component to it. Maybe a spiritual component is a better way to say religious, although many of the European pilgrimages are Catholic in origin. I think many of us who do pilgrimage don't have that religious affiliation, but there is some type of spiritual connection with the journey as well.
Okay.
And of course, there's also many other pilgrimage traditions around the world, and in Islam, obviously to Mecca.
And kind of, cries a little. So I don't know if I did have them trimmed at the bed, like in September, and I remember seeing a nail in the house, and I was like, oh, how weird. And we have two cats, so I thought, oh, maybe it's Oliver's back one. But it kind of looks like it grew back a little.
We can
So
get you to
I was
much
thinking
that is.
go to the vet and look at it, make sure there's no infection.
There, got it. All right. So anyone else? I'd be curious. So the question is, what does pilgrimage mean to you? I think that's a good question. Does anybody want to chime in? By all means, raise your hand or unmute and just speak up or add it to the chat conversation. That would be fine.
Hi, David. I'm Mark. I would just add, the simple definition of moving with the mind and the heart towards a spiritual destination.
Yeah.
Kind of moving a body, mind, and spirit towards a destination, whether that's a physical destination or a spiritual one or both.
Thank you, Mark. I like what you said is that I certainly in what I was talking about are physical destinations. What we're doing this month, what I'm hoping to do is introduce these topics, and those would be virtual destinations, right? They're places in our hearts and our minds. So, and I like that, I think they still require the effort, right? That we get from the physical journey, and that's what I hope to introduce here. Thank you for adding that. Anyone else?
I am new to this in terms of this is the first year I'm trying to do the virtual Camino.
Mhm.
I've been wanting to do the actual physical trip one for a few years, but I thought, well, this will be a good way to just do this virtually first and be part of this group for the month of January. And my father died January 31, 2023, and a very big influence in my life and a very dear man to me. So I think sometimes people go on pilgrimage when there's been a big transition or a loss to just kind of see what you can learn from that or how to move forward or how to maybe integrate some of their spirit and energy into your own life. So last year was all about him dying and then the devastation of like he's not on earth with me anymore. And but I thought, okay, we're at the 1 year anniversary, so I want to be intentional now at just kind of taking on pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And just now that the loss is less fresh, just yeah, and I've had a job transition too. So I think sometimes to answer your question, I forget where he went, but Encore, it's sometimes a pilgrimage is what you do at a time of transition or loss and grief, just to just open yourself to what to learn and how to heal.
Yeah, well said, Karen. We're sorry for your loss. And I
Thank
think
you.
many of us, I would agree, many of us do it at a time of transition in life. I've talked to many people who've done it at a time of loss, a time of separation, divorce, a career change, health issues. I think these are all things that people encounter either, you know, before they go on pilgrimage, that's why they go, or maybe it's just getting their heads around it and their hearts around it as they go on walk. So welcome to the Camino for Good community. We're welcome you, and I hope you find the focus that you're looking for. Anyone else? Linda added that her pilgrimage on the chat was to honor and remember two friends who had just passed away. And it was a very healing journey. I think that's so true for many of us. Yeah. Yeah, Linda, go ahead, please. Yep. Yeah, you'll have to unmute.
There we go.
There you go.
Yes, and what was your name again? Oh, Karen. Yeah, Karen. I think that from my experience, you'll find this just remarkable to help with your healing and with your journey after your loss. I think every step of the way was in honor of our two friends that had just passed, and it was just it really was meaningful for us. And we're not religious. Well, my friends, I went with two other friends, mutual friends, and we're not religious people, but we found so much that was spiritual and that was just, we felt like our friends were with us, like every step of the way. And it was just, to do that for them was just so remarkable. And we did something interesting. We had everyone that we knew that knew them and they cared for them. They wrote something about them, and they either emailed it to us and I typed it out and clipped it out, or they wrote a card or a little note, and we took those notes and cards with us all the way to Santiago. And we found a place to put them in Santiago. But along the way, as we stopped at monuments, we would put a stone or a note in their memory there and think about them. And it was just, it was just remarkable. So I'm not very articulate about it because it's kind of emotional, but very emotional. But it was a wonderful thing to do. And I think you would gain so much from doing that in terms of peace and in terms of just really feeling what the Camino is all about for each of us. So.
Thank you, Linda. And I think you were very articulate, very beautiful. Yeah. I think also what you've said there, as so many of us, is that I hear many people say, well, I'm not religious, but they have some type of, it's enlightenment. It's a spiritual experience. It's an inner enlightenment that comes from focused, heartfelt walking with purpose. Yeah. I only scheduled about 30 minutes for this, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce a little bit of the topics here. And then I'll open it up for more discussion for everybody who wants to stay on longer. By all means, we can stay on and discuss more. I'm going to show, this is the workbook we put together. So, sorry, I've got two things on my screen there. So our topic is on focus during the month. And I think this is so important to an enlightened journey, kind of to know yourself, to understand yourself, to learn more about it. Part of what I find so beautiful about the Camino de Santiago is, as you can see behind me, that yellow arrow, right, pointing the way, the shell pointing the way. We have clear focus of where we're going, and all else kind of goes into the back burner in life, right? While you're walking, those 10, 20, 30, 40 days, however long you're on it. Your purpose, your focus is that arrow, following it to Santiago. And it clears the mind of so many other problems and issues and noise and clutter that we have in our lives, right? And so I think the opportunity here is for the new year to say, let's set some focus for the year. So, and walk virtually with that kind of intention. So what I've put together is there's 4 weeks, 4 weekly activities, and then there's a bonus activity. I'm going to explain each of these. Well, I'm going to go into depth for week 1, which is the Future Perfect activity. And you'll see that these tie together. Week 2 would be life targets. Week 3 would be headwinds or obstacles, challenges we face. And then week 4, the one thing. And what I mean by that is maybe the one thing that's most important at this time in our lives.
Oh.
And then the bonus activity is an intentional vision board that helps. Many people like to do these vision boards to help them focus on that one thing for the rest of the year. This guide is, if you've downloaded it, if you haven't, it's on the chat. Further up the chat room, I'll put it on there again before we're done. But the guidebook is set up for the week of January. There's no goals for how far you walk. I think you could restart your pilgrimage on Camino for Good if you'd like to. You can pick it up where you're at right now. It doesn't really matter. You could do this over a month. If you wanted to do it faster, you certainly can. It's your pilgrimage. Do it at your speed. Do it at your pace. But what I will do is on a weekly basis, so a week, and I'm going to stick to Wednesday, I think, since we started this. A week from today, same time, we'll do a follow-up where we'll review the prior week's activity. So next week, we'll review the Future Perfect, and then I'll introduce the life targets. And we'll take this one step at a time as we go through the month. So I'm going to move down to this first activity and explain what it is. So the Future Perfect, first of all, when I looked this up from the source of all knowledge, Wikipedia, the Future Perfect is a construction used to describe an event that is expected or planned to happen before a time of reference in the future, such as, I will have finished by tomorrow. So the Future Perfect activity is to think about tomorrow. Think about where you want to be down the road, what your future would bring. If the world were perfect, what would you like to achieve? If the world were perfect, who would you like to become? So during this, during each day of the week, there's activities. So and I think walking is a part of this. So what I would ask you to do is to walk on the Camino for Good, walk around your neighborhood, take a bike ride, walk on the treadmill if it's too cold to go outside, and think about those activities. And then there's space to capture that on the workbook. Okay. So the first one, the day one, would be to create a list of statements that define each of your aspired life accomplishments. What do you want to achieve? What accomplishments will give you the most meaning? Okay. So think about it, and we're all in different places in our lives, right? Some are early on in our lives, some are on the later side of life. I'm kind of on the later side of my career, looking at what is my kind of second phase or third phase of my life going to look like. So what would I like to accomplish? Day 2 is to explain who you are or who you will be as a person. What values you will have demonstrated and passed on to others. So if you were to look at, Future Perfect again and say, I'm nearing the end of my life, or I'm nearing the end of my career, what is it that you'd like to pass on to others? What values? My wife and I had a meeting. We had our Christmas celebration, New Year's celebration last night. We got together our 7 children. Combined, we have 7 children. And it's a different phase now, right? I look at my boys, they're men now. And what is it that I would like to transmit to them at this phase of my life? What would I like to be remembered for? Those are the kind of things I'm asking you to think about on day 1 and day 2. Day 3, what is it about you that people most value and respect? What would you be disappointed not to hear from others as they celebrate your life? So if this was a life celebration, what would be the big gap that that someone didn't say about you that you'd like to develop more in the future? So day 4 would be to consolidate that list of accomplished values and behaviors from the first 3 days. Sorry, that's an error. And what is the essence of the impact you've had on others? And then day 5 is imagine you're writing a newspaper article to review your life legacy. Can you write a short, concise paragraph that defines that legacy? And then number 6, what is the one thing that is most important for you to achieve or to gift to others? If you had to limit your impact to one thing, what would it be? And then day 7 is to finalize kind of a map. So let me show you this down here. We have tools here to do this. So, oops, sorry, I don't. I don't. So this week it's just there's not a space to capture this. You have to capture it on a workbook. But the idea here is then to start big, right? Brainstorm what you'd like to be remembered for. Brainstorm what your strengths are. And then start to narrow that down. What would you like others to remember you for? And then narrow it down to a concise statement. And if you had to give one thing, and maybe you can't get down to one thing, maybe it's 2 or 3 things that are essential, most important, what would it be? I do this, I'm gonna move, you'll lose my image for a second. I do these in workshops all the time, and it's hard to do here virtually, but what I'm doing is I give people value cards or statements about themselves, and there's like 100 of these, and they go through them and they say, what is it that I most value? This one says dignity. So the idea is you go through these and narrow it down to like the top 10, narrow it down to the top 1 or 2. That's kind of what we're doing this week in these exercises. And then what I'd like to do is come back next week at the same time and share some of those. I'm not going to force anybody to share, any deep things that they don't want to reveal in public. But if anyone would like to share some of the things that they learned through their walking, through their meditation, and through these guided activities, to share them, and then we'll introduce week 2 at that time as well. Any questions, comments, concerns, complaints? I'm going to send out that link again if you want to download the materials. That's where it's at on the Camino for Good side.
I have a quick question on the app. I've done the journey and I would like to do it again. How do I start back over? Because everything's checked off that I've done it.
Yeah, there's a reset button. You can go back and reset it, and you can do 2 things. One, you could sign up for another path if you'd like, or you can reset the one that you've purchased, or if you're on a monthly plan, then you can do any of the paths. But if I'm going to put my email address here. Email me if you can't find it, and I'll send you directions to it.
Okay, thank you.
There's also, I was going to see, I could probably find it online for you, but it might take me a minute to bounce around. There is a frequently asked questions on the website. And that is one of them that's addressed. So if you go to caminoforgood.com, you can find it there. And just look in the frequently asked questions. Hope that helps, Deb. If not, shoot me an email.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks for using it. I'm glad it's working for you. Any other comments or questions? I am going to stop this recording. I'm just going to wish you a buen camino as we do this month. I hope you are excited about it. I'm going to stop the recording and wish you well, but